From Hamilton Place Strategies in Washington, D.C., this is the HPS Insights Podcast.
Welcome to HPS Insights, a podcast from Hamilton Place Strategies analyzing the current events impacting the business and political communities. I'm your host, Michael Steele. As part of our continuing look at the 2020 elections, I'm talking today with Danielle Burr, the head of federal affairs at Uber, about Uber's efforts to improve voter accessibility this year. Many people believe the 2020 presidential election, in particular, will be the most important of their lives, and the COVID-19 pandemic creates unique challenges to voting, particularly for older Americans most at risk from the virus. The first step towards voting is registering, and a full 62% of unregistered voters report never having been asked to register. COVID-19 will likely exacerbate this number, with many traditional avenues for registration, such as in-person at the DMV, no longer as widely accessible. The next step is making sure registered voters can actually cast a ballot, either by mail or in person at a polling location. Historically, Get Out the Vote efforts, called GOTV, which help citizens both register and vote, have been undertaken by political campaigns, party committees, civil rights, and activist organizations. But with an increased focus on corporate social responsibility in recent years, more and more private sector companies are taking an active role. HPS was interested in diving more into this topic about how companies and organizations have deployed their unique assets to improve voter accessibility. We're excited to be joined by our friends at Uber to hear about why and how they're getting involved with GOTV this year, starting now by increasing voter registration and rolling out a series of initiatives all the way through Election Day to help people get to the polls. With that, I'm excited to introduce Danielle Burr, the head of Uber's federal affairs team.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks for having me here today.
Danielle, can you start by telling us a little bit about Uber's commitment to helping people vote and making sure that everyone who wants to has access to voting on Election Day or before this year?
Sure. As we did in 2016 and in 2018, we recognize Uber has a unique opportunity to help move Americans to vote in the upcoming election. Unlike in years past, however, the 2020 election, the COVID-19 pandemic, the Black Lives Matter protests, is culminated in a really critical moment for our country. And so consumers are looking to the brands that they trust to provide leadership, support, and community during this critical time. And so we're going to step up. What we're going to be doing is working to ensure that every eligible American citizen, regardless of what barriers they face, has access to the polls this election season. We're focused on 3 core areas to help get folks registered, and we will encourage voter registration through our own Uber apps. We will help consumers find their polling locations or request an absentee ballot also within our app. And we'll also be educating those in the community about how they can actually support poll workers this election season and volunteer in those polling locations.
And I know you're working with some partners. Can you talk a little bit about those organizations and their role? One in particular, Pizza for the Polls, was my favorite.
Absolutely. Powering the polls, there's more than 500,000 new volunteers that are going to be required to keep the polls open this year. So as a founding member of Powering the Polls, we're encouraging people to vote as poll workers during this election day. And we've partnered with a lot of organizations, including the Civic Alliance, National Voter Registration Day, Early Vote Day, and Time to Vote to do so. Additionally, we are working in select cities to provide those standing in long lines or working with the polls, maybe some snacks and sustainment along the way through one of our partnerships that we're also excited about, Pizza to the Polls.
I know you guys worked on this issue in 2016, but in 2020, with the COVID pandemic, the economic devastation that's resulted, there's so many important charitable projects this year. Why is voting such a priority for Uber?
Sure. Of the 40% of eligible voters who did not vote in 2016, 14% of them said transportation was a major reason for not voting. So, and 2/3 of Americans say they're uncomfortable going to a polling place given the pandemic, which may upend the way we cast ballots and necessitate absentee ballots. So making elections about community and celebration can really help us with the increased participation within our electorate.
The pandemic has really upended the way Uber has worked and the relative importance of some of the parts of the business as rides have kind of declined somewhat. Uber Eats is more popular than ever, is surging as people are sheltering at home and more reliant than ever. Is Uber Eats in particular a part of the Get Out the Vote strategy?
Absolutely. Yeah, as I mentioned, powering the polls, the pizza to the polls. Those are all, important opportunities to generate excitement on election day. This year, we've teamed up once again with TurboVote, though, to help all those users across our platforms, whether it's riders, eaters, drivers, delivery people, to register to vote or to even request an absentee ballot through both the Uber Rides and the Uber Eats apps. We'll be sending a reminder push notification in the US. And so individuals can be reminded as they're waiting for their Uber Eats delivery to arrive to register to vote.
Given the pandemic, there are going to be an unprecedented number of people voting early, voting by mail, et cetera. But there are also folks who want to vote the old-fashioned way, who want to show up at their polling place and pull a lever on election day. You'll be helping them as well, right?
Absolutely. As I mentioned, we know from 2016 that 14% of eligible voters noted that transportation was a barrier to voting. So that's why leading up to this election day, we're going to really work hard to help find polling locations within the Uber app for those riders. We're also going to be providing a promo code so that those who are riding on the Uber app can enjoy a discounted ride to the polls. Much more to come and the details of that promo code as we get closer to election day.
That's great. That's going to be hugely helpful. In addition to helping people get to the polls, does Uber do anything to help Uber employees, the folks who work at the company, get to exercise their constitutional rights?
Absolutely. We're super excited to be a part of the Time to Vote initiative with a lot of other companies who are encouraging employees to take the time off to vote. We also will be doing in-office voter registration events, and we are encouraging our employees to volunteer as well through our partnership with Power the Polls. So those folks can take time off to vote. They can also take time off to be able to serve as poll workers in their community this year. No faction of our platform will be untouched leading up to this election day.
That's terrific. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of HPS Insights. Special thanks to our guest today, Danielle Burr, Head of Federal Affairs for Uber. You can find out more about Hamilton Place Strategies' work and our podcasts at www.hamiltonplacestrategies.com or by following us on Twitter at HPS Insight. I'm your host, Michael Steele. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to the HPS Insights podcast, produced by Hamilton Place Strategies. For the latest updates, follow us on Twitter at HPS Insight and visit us on the web at hamiltonplacestrategies.com.